A common pitfall among yoga teachers is overthinking the concept of being a yoga teacher rather than simply being an individual who teaches yoga. And this illusion of the ego, the snare or trap, becomes the pursuit of adopting a role or putting on a persona as if preparing for a performance. Relinquishing the attachment to fitting into an idealized image of a yoga teacher is essential, as it also reflects the approach taken to access an embodied state of authenticity when we are creating various yoga pose shapes. The two states of being are complementary to each other and require the release of perfection to embrace the presence of being human as a student and as a teacher. Welcome back to the Beyond Yoga Teacher Training Podcast. I'm your host, Sandy Raper. If this is your first time listening, I want to extend a special welcome. I am so grateful that our paths have crossed, and I appreciate you taking the time to connect with me in today's episode. And if you've been a listener for a while, welcome back. I am so grateful for you and our global community of listeners. It's hard to believe it's September, but here we are. And for many of us, this time of year, this season brings new beginnings, new schedules and routines as we shift out of summer and into the season of fall. A lot is showing up for me within this shift, and the idea and process of transitions has become more prevalent. Recently, I embarked on the journey of yoga teacher training with a new group of trainees within my 200-hour training program. The initial weekend is always filled with a variety of emotions, expectations, and the need to gain traction that propels us forward into the deeper waters of all that type of training and of that magnitude offers. The first weekend sets the tone and charts the course for the success of the entire training program. The weekend was amazing, and I left with a feeling of having laid a solid foundation upon which all that will come and will be built and supported. It takes great courage to embark on the journey of becoming or pursuing a yoga teacher training. Perhaps it isn't about becoming anything, though. Rather, it's about learning how to be yourself, uncovering the layers of insecurity and false narratives that the ego would ask for you or for us to embrace. In that first weekend and throughout the training, I find myself reminding trainees to trust the process, to trust me, and the structured guidance that is going to infuse confidence and assurance in their capacity to lead and teach others. And I do that by having trainees teach from the very beginning, from the first weekend. Part of the foundation that creates confidence comes within the form of experiential application. So if it's called a teacher training, then that's what we begin pursuing from the very beginning. Now, you might be thinking, how can trainees begin doing this in the first weekend? Is it like you throw them into the deep end and hope that somehow they intuitively begin to swim? Well, no. For me, I equip trainees with a life vest, a framework, you could call it, that gets them started, gets them speaking and leading their peers. This framework has continued to prove to be successful, and it sets trainees up right away with a foundation that instills confidence in their capacity to do this work, the work of teaching and sharing yoga. It's from this remembered capacity that trainees begin to trust themselves and acknowledge their capacity to be themselves, sharing the amazing life practice of yoga. You see, I hear it often during that initial transitional phase or beginning of teacher training. The trainees are seeking to get it right. They do want to be effective, yet in the pursuit of getting it right, they begin to get in their own way. This concept of getting in your own way becomes a great obstacle and one that paralyzes us at times, and it has shown up for me in a lot of conversations. So, in hearing that message and inspiration, here we are. Today, I thought I'd spend some time discussing the pitfalls of overthinking this aspect of, quote, being a yoga teacher. And in doing so, I'd like to remove this idea of relinquishing the aspect of ourselves to put on some idea or notion that we must become something else or someone else to teach yoga. In essence, stop trying so hard to be a yoga teacher. Instead, choose to be you teaching yoga. Let's begin with a few common symptoms of overthinking as it shows up when preparing to teach yoga. I think it can pretty much be summed up as getting caught up in the sequence, caught up in the perfection of delivering a creative and engaging sequence with possibly a stronger desire to wow the students or entertain them, even, that you miss the beautiful simplicity found within what each of the asanas in their own way is trying to express and offer. The collection of yoga poses offers us a vehicle to chart the course to a vast terrain that awaits us. And when you find yourself caught up in striving to deliver the perfection of a class sequence, you miss the bigger picture. Excessive planning, fear of not remembering, or fear of making a mistake, and the potential self-criticism that comes when you don't get it all right become a dangerous self-sabotaging mixture that makes teaching more about you than the students you are seeking to serve. One of my favorite go-to self-reflections is to acknowledge when I'm getting in my own way, trying too hard to please, to perfect, to possibly be some ideal version of what we tend to think a yoga teacher looks and sounds like. And this will only diminish your purpose to share and serve others as someone who teaches the life practice of yoga. So how do you get out of your own way? Well, let's talk about that. I want to highlight 3 areas for you. First, stop trying so hard and simplify. Simplify and trust your training. The purpose of teacher training is to equip you with the skills and core principles to teach and lead effectively a yoga class. Well, at least that's what I believe the experience is to be. Through the act of learning how to teach someone else, you ultimately learn exponentially about the topic you're teaching. In this case, teacher training should provide you with the tools, resources, and practice teaching experiences that not only allow you to become skilled in teaching the technique, but it also cultivates and enhances a deeper understanding of what you know the practice of yoga to be. Something shifts and changes when our learning mindset becomes one that desires to apply and understand how to effectively communicate, sharing, and teaching someone else. Your teacher training lays a foundation of knowledge, and focusing on teaching from that knowledge base helps you to simplify the process and ultimately get out of your own way of trying to reinvent the wheel, so to speak, every time you teach a class. The issue arises when your teacher training experience doesn't equip you with these skills and these learning experiences and practice teaching experiences and resources. If you find yourself in this situation, then I want to encourage you to seek out support and guidance to establish the necessary framework you need to teach from. This includes a sequencing model or an approach of how to effectively cue and lead others with clear and direct language and understanding the dynamic relational aspect of your teaching skill set, coupled with ample experiential experience, teaching experience that will boost your confidence and ready you to lead a yoga class skillfully. If you're lacking in any of these areas, then I highly encourage you to seek out guidance and support to fill the gaps. I'll even add here that I am a resource for this type of guidance through mentorship. So if you feel your teaching skill set has some gaps, then reach out to me because I certainly can support you in filling those gaps. The next way that you can stop trying so hard and you can get out of your own way is to trust your instincts. There is an intuitive aspect to teaching that extends far past sequencing a collection of postures together. Now, I want to reinforce nothing is random when it comes to sequencing, but when you have a therapeutic and well thought framework for sequencing that supports you in skillfully leading every class you lead, yes, every class, then you can begin to simplify that process and you can begin to develop the intuitive aspect of teaching. This aspect is reflected within reading energy and emotions. Sensing the emotional and energetic state of your students in your classes is vital, and it provides and equips you with great teaching feedback. This ability helps you to adjust the class dynamics in real time, void of the attached place that you can get stuck in your own way, when you're caught up in recall of your class sequence. Trusting your instinctual guidance will allow you the space to meet students where they are and access the needs of the practice experience, and to make the necessary adjustments, even to make the proactive practice experience successful for all students. Yes, I believe wholeheartedly that success is the primary emphasis in the class experience. It's the end point, or the culmination of every class that I teach is defined based upon the individual's need that each student brings into the space, and that they ultimately find success within that experience. An intuitive teacher creates a trusting environment where students feel safe and accepted, which can enhance their ability to relax and focus during the practice time. This involves understanding and responding to the group's collective mood, energy, and natural flow, or the pace, tempo of the class. This instinctual knowledge listens to the class and develops a keen sense of knowing when it's time to move on, when it's time to slow down, to linger, to explore. And it's all based upon the overall rhythm and energy of the room. Let's move along to the next way that you can stop trying so hard and get out of your own way, and that is through the avoidance of perfectionism. Avoiding perfectionism begins with the acceptance of imperfection. Let me say that again. Avoiding perfection begins with the acceptance of imperfection. Stop trying so hard to be a yoga teacher. Instead, be a human who teaches yoga. Embrace the imperfect aspect of being human, and it will make teaching so much more freeing and enjoyable. Now, listen closely. This does not mean that you should not strive to be skillful and effective. Please work on your skill set. Please work towards developing, growing, and refining your teaching and technical skill set. Importantly, commit to personal practice time. Draw inspiration from gaining a deeper understanding of all that the yoga practice would desire to equip you with, living a life present and clear rather than distracted and reactive. Embrace learning opportunities. So reframe mistakes, if you want to call it that, and approach those less than enjoyable teaching experiences, those clunky moments, I like to call it, those paralyzing moments, even when you do forget your sequence, and it will happen. And so, with the lens and view of humanity, seek to refine and tell yourself next time in the next teaching opportunity, I will choose to do this differently. We paralyze ourselves from stepping into confidence when we set a bar of perfection as a teacher and as a student, even. When we approach teaching from our humanity, this authentic approach to teaching will also permit students to approach their practice in the same manner, choosing to be present rather than perfect. We teach what is important, so guard that aspect well and get out of the way of students experiencing all that the life practice of yoga has to offer them in their lives. Lastly, as I bring this episode to a close, let's expand on what could be a byproduct or snare of teaching from a place of perfection. And that is falling into the illusion of self-sufficiency. When this happens, you begin to rely on yourself as the source of the teachings of yoga, instead of acknowledging that all teachings come from a greater source. It's bigger than you and any other teacher. The teachings of yoga do not come from you. They are poured into you and pass through you and onto others as you share and teach. Listen to that again. There are two key words here: from and through. The teachings of yoga do not come from you. You did not create the teachings. Rather, the teachings pass through you because you received them from a greater source. Here's the bigger picture again. And I'll add, teaching yoga is not about you. The ego can create the illusion that teaching is solely from our knowledge, our understanding, our creativity, rather than it being that we are a vessel, a conduit through which the teachings are poured and passed. Thank you for joining me today. Take some time to evaluate whether you're making teaching yoga way too hard, or you're trying too hard to be a yoga teacher. What would happen if you shifted that perspective? You gave yourself some space and grace to be human, and then simply but beautifully be you teaching yoga. Take some time to establish a balanced routine between your personal practice time and your teaching schedule so that you can refuel your passion and desire to teach while avoiding burnout that will come from trying way too hard. Make your self-care a priority so that you can stay connected and grounded as that vessel and that conduit. Engage with other teachers, share from your experiences, and seek guidance from experienced teachers and mentors who can support your ongoing development and growth. Hey, before you head off into your day, thank you for joining me today. Take a moment, though, and connect with me a little further. Head over to my website, sandyraper.com, and check out all of the wonderful resources that are waiting there to support you. Until next time.